What's up, everybody? Welcome to another LED live show. And today's topic is kind of something that's not a shocker. This album has been out for at least a month now. And there's been a lot of people who have been talking about this. But I think there is an important lesson for us to learn when observing what went wrong in this girl's life. What happened to her that she now has gotten to this level? Because just a little short while ago, she was identifying as Christian. So let's get into this. Let's break it down. But before I get into that, I want to throw you guys a warning. Because some of the stuff that is talked about in this album is very adult things. And so if you are of a young age, maybe go ask your parents to watch this first. If they say that it's okay, go ahead and watch this. But I just want to give you a warning. Please, viewer discretion, be advised in this. We're not going to be graphic in showing you pictures, but there's definitely some things that we need to discuss with this album because there is some terrible, terrible things that are coming out of this. So let's dive into this. She first put this album out, and of course the title of the album is called Holy, and a very not very good word, can't even say it. And if you just look through the song titles that she has chosen, I mean, there's things that say, heaven and city of angels, and the one that she has called Eat Me is also featuring a serpent, somebody that identifies as the serpent. So there's a lot of Christian themes in here. The cover of the album is her in the mid of a cross that is a bed-shaped cross. And she's wearing like bondage outfits, and it is absolutely blasphemous. So how did she get here? That's the lesson that we want to explore today. Why is she doing this, and what steps did she make that really caused her to all of a sudden reject religion and go the other side of the story? So let's dive into a little backstory. She's been in the entertainment industry ever since she was a young child, and she grew up in a pretty rough situation. Here she's going to tell you. This comes from a documentary that was released on YouTube, and it really kind of breaks down some of the early struggles that she even grew up with when she started working in the entertainment industry. Listen to this.
If you look at my family history, my mom has dealt with substances and an eating disorder, so I didn't know any different. Then I was put in beauty pageants where it's extremely competitive and it's all about your looks and your talent. My self-esteem was just completely damaged from those beauty pageants. I remember actually making a pact with myself saying, if I don't win this pageant, I will never eat again. Then you put me in front of a camera and on stage, and it's just like, of course I'm going to be super competitive and try to be the best at everything that I do.
So she was very vocal in her early upbringing. Getting placed in this adult world was difficult for any child. I mean, the little amount that I spent in Hollywood and the little amount that I actually know of that place, Hollywood, I'll tell you what, if my child ever said, Dad, I want to go to Hollywood and become an actor or an actress, I would never let my daughter go through that. We have seen story after story after story of these seemingly innocent kids that get involved in the Disney Channel, and all of a sudden, like, they become adults and they just rebel and go totally anti-Christ. And so this story is happening again and again and again. And here she's talking a little bit about that. But she actually, on the early part of her career, was identifying as Christian. Listen to this.
I love you, you love me.
Even then, she dreamed and prayed she'd one day get the chance to really sing.
It sounds ridiculous, but I kind of made a pact with God. And I don't think you're even supposed to do that, but I was like, I promise if you make me a singer, one day I'm going to use my voice for so much more than singing, and I'm going to help people with it.
And you've held up your end of the bargain.
I've held up my end of the bargain. I still do.
And God's held up his.
And God held up his. He was like, you don't realize what you're asking for, but here you go.
Very interesting that she thinks that God was the one that really opened up the door for her to be involved in this industry. Now, I'm not going to make too big of a statement out of that. Perhaps, maybe she was asking God, and maybe God had plans for her to be a part of that. I don't know. I'm gonna. If I were to tell you my opinion, I would say God would not send one of his children into the middle of that crazy business. But there are people in that business that need saving as well. So maybe God sent her there, had some plan for her to use her gifts and talents. In fact, she even mentions that when she went to a youth camp, that she felt that God was telling her through somebody to actually go, and she'll be a big help to people and bless them using her art. Listen to this.
A very specific moment when God told me that I was supposed to do this. I didn't know exactly in which way, shape, or form I was going to reach so many people, but I went to a Pentecostal Baptist convention, and this woman sees me from the crowd, and there was like probably 100, 200 kids there, and she points at me and says, "Come up." And she put her hand on me and she said, "God said you're gonna be a hero to thousands of people one day. And it's gonna have to do with art. You're gonna be an artist. And you're gonna touch a lot of people and save lives." And the last thing that she said was, "Are you ready?"
Form. I don't believe in irony or coincidence. I feel like everything happens for a reason the way it's supposed to. And, you know, there was actually a long time ago, I was at a church convention when I was 11 years old, and they started speaking in tongue, and I was like, what is this? So I was like freaked out, but like interested at the same time. And the lady who was speaking in tongue, she pointed at me and said, "Come here." And I just walked up and she put her hand on my head and she started saying, "God says you will be a hero to thousands of people one day, and it'll be using some form of art." Wow. And she said, "Are you ready?" And of course, me being at like 11 years old, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go paint a picture. What can I do?
So that's pretty crazy. Like, she didn't just go on one interview. That's entertainment right there. That's like the entertainment news reporting channel, and she's not shy about telling this story that she really feels like God put her in this position. Now, there was a documentary that was made on her life because she went through an absolute tragedy. She ended up overdosing. She was 5 minutes away from dying. She was literally dead. And she had this experience, and then she, right soon after she came out of rehab and after getting healthy, she ended up doing this documentary that was like, I need to tell people what went wrong. And so listen to how she's even saying, like, I got a second chance in life. Listen to this.
It's not very common that you'd see someone with a drug-related overdose with this degree of multi-organ failure that would come out of it relatively unscathed and do as well as she has.
It's like a nice reminder that it wasn't my time, you know, that there was more life to be lived.
You know, if you had come that close to death and all of a sudden you were like given a second chance, how would you respond to that? How would you treat that? I think anybody that goes through that kind of experience is literally going to say, okay, I better be doing something positive with my life. And that's really the angle that she began to start to take. Listen to this. She literally says, that was a wake-up call to me. And I have gotten myself way deep in this problem. She was doing all kinds of crazy partying and drugs and things like that, living a very fast-paced life of Hollywood. And then when this experience happened, listen to what she says right here.
I knew that what I had been looking for, I hadn't found yet. But what I had been looking for was not in the form of a drug. It was the spiritual growth that I've had over the past, I even want to say like 7 months. That spiritual growth is what I was looking for.
I mean, she's honest, dead honest. What I thought I was searching for in doing all those drugs, I need something more than that. And she started to open herself up to becoming more. Did you hear how she said spiritual? I want you to pay attention to this because she literally has identified as a Christian, but then all of a sudden, as she starts taking these steps, we notice something strange starting to happen. Look at this. She even went as far to go to Israel, and she ended up getting baptized. Here's a picture of what she posted when she got baptized. Listen to this. She says, I never felt a sense of spirituality or connection to God. She's getting baptized in the River Jordan at this point. And she says, something I've been missing for a few years. Spirituality is so important to me. To be baptized in the Jordan River, the same place that Jesus was baptized, I never felt more renewed in my life. She starts to make these steps and saying, I need God. She gets baptized. What's baptism a symbol of, right? That's a dying to your old self and coming back up as a new creation. That's an important part to understand what's happening with her right now. But she starts still hanging out with a lot of the same people. She's still part of Hollywood. She's still engaging with these people who really, for whatever reason, don't have a very strong interest in spiritual things or godly things. And so as we start to see her saying that she's Christian, she started talking with aliens. She started getting into spiritualistic ideas. Here's a clip where she was on a paranormal TV show with some of her friends, and they're literally talking to a demon box. This is called a spirit box, is I think what they call it, or a communication box. It's a radio that they tune into a certain frequency, and then they ask it questions. Kind of like that 8-ball, the thing that you could ask yes or no, and it would ask you questions, or like a Ouija board. Think of this more like a modern technology version of that. And so look at this. They start messing around with this. Listen very carefully to this. If you place yourself on the devil's ground, it doesn't matter if you call yourself a Christian, you walked into his space, and them sitting there having this spirit box that supposedly can talk to the spirits of the dead. The Bible's very clear. The dead know nothing. There is no more remembrance of them. They are literally dead, like asleep, dead, until Jesus comes again. And so who is she communicating with in this box? And she starts having some very mixed kind of ideas coming out of her. She began to reject her femininity and say she now no longer wants to be called a she or a her. She wants to be called a they and a them. And she was embracing her non-binary situation. These things are not what the Bible is trying to teach us about. And this is a lesson to us, is when we start to associate with people who really don't have a care in the world with God, we start to take on those influences. Now, she did an interview, okay? She recently rejected that whole idea of they and her, them, and she said, I'm going to go back to my pronouns of her and she. So she's at least now identifying back as a female, and she was getting interviewed by a podcaster that is doing it for Apple Music. And she's talking about this album and what she put in the album. So here she's sitting down and telling him a little bit about where the inspiration came from. She calls this her best work. And this album that they're talking about is the album where we began this conversation, called Holy, and a not so nice word.
I've lost friends that were around my age, and those hurt so deeply because we've been in the trenches together.
You address this on Dead Friends.
Yes.
It's a song that ultimately addresses survivor's guilt.
Yeah, definitely. I had a lot of survivor's guilt after my overdose. And because there was, right after that, Mac Miller died. And it just put everything into perspective for me of like, that could have been you, that almost was you. And how are you going to live your life now?
Listen to how she's responding to that. Even a friend of hers that OD'd and died, and she literally says, that was almost me. Like that could have been me. And she's going, how am I living my life now? And so she starts developing and working on this idea of this record, and she's putting these ideas all together from her past growing up as Christian. But man, they are so opposite of the Bible. Listen to what she's talking about here.
I think about that dynamic of life and death and how it's such a fine line, and yet you continue to defy it. And I wonder where that faith sits now, because religion plays a pretty important role in this album. I mean, it's called Holy F***.
So he's even recognizing, hey, religion plays a big part of this album, and titling it that. They're praising her for titling it that. And this is awful. We showed you some of the names that were coming out of here, but I want to break this down a little bit, because in this interview, as she starts to divulge why is she putting this religious ideas in it? Why is she kind of slamming God? Listen to what she says.
There's a song on this album called Heaven, which is actually about a Bible verse.
It's a good one.
So this Bible verse is Matthew 5:30. It says, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It's better to lose one part of your body than your entire body to hell. I heard that. I feared. I lived in fear. And then as I got older, I felt so much shame around my sexuality because of the church that I was raised in. And so when I was taking the power back of my anger, I was thinking of all the things that have suppressed me in my life, whether it be relationships, whether it be people of my past team, or whether it be the church. I wanted to take my power back, and I'm going to write this song about this Bible verse, and it's going to be called Heaven, because I'm going to hell because it feels like heaven.
And there's the line. You get one for that. It's a great line.
Thanks.
You can sum up great songs can be summed in one line. I'm going to hell because it feels like heaven is up there. And by the way, that would sit in any song by like any of the great like 80s hair metal bands of all time. Right? I'm going to hell because it feels like heaven. Like,
can you imagine? This is somebody that literally almost died, was 5 minutes away from dying. She's recognizing God's giving her a second chance. God's impressing upon her mind that she needs something else in life. And then she turns around and starts doing this, writing songs about that. And I ended up chopping up this song. She tells you the reason and what this song is really about. And it is awful. I mean, awful. Listen to this. The song called Heaven says, crucified for the life I'm living. Oh my God, hope I'm forgiven. Going to hell because it feels like heaven. Speaking in tongues to release my demons. I can't help it. Guess I'm heathen. Going to hell because it feels like heaven. What is this? She says, if pleasure's wrong, cast me out like a sinner. I found myself with two little fingers. And then the song just derails from there. This is awful. I mean, we're talking so blasphemous. And it's basically like, well, if pleasure's wrong, then I'm going to just go to hell because it feels like heaven. What in the world? Somebody that doesn't really have a transformed heart is going to fight eventually against God. Listen to this. Her song, Holy, and then that's what this album is titled after. Listen to these lyrics. Like a serpent in a garden, I am truth and I am darkness. I am an angel, I am a demon, just depends on what you're feeling. I'm the fruit that was forbidden, but don't keep my evil hidden. I'm the one she was afraid of, now I'm what your dreams are made of. I'll show you the light when the light's off. And when all the lights are off, I'll bring you to life. I'm a holy... I don't even want to repeat the phrase. This is a reminder, brothers and sisters, that if we are not grounded in the truth, we are like that seed, that parable that Jesus said, that gets cast upon all the different soil types, right? Here's some seed that got cast on stony ground that took root quickly, but then all of a sudden the sun comes out. And what happens to the plant? It begins to wither and die because that root was not grounded in fertile soil to accept those truths. This is so blasphemous. It is hard to even wrap your mind around. Why would you do this? If you really, truly, honestly grew up and understood what God, he died on the cross for you. Why would you put yourself in a bondage outfit on a bed that looks like a cross? So she's on Jimmy Fallon, and there's something that's really interesting. He's asking her about this album that she was in. He says, this was, you put a lot of work into this album. Listen to how she responds to this.
Yeah, I read in an interview that you did about this, is that you said this album is, you loved because this is the most you felt like yourself on an album.
Yeah.
That's a big thing to say. I mean,
thank you.
Because you have to go through a lot to go like, yeah, I actually know who I am now.
Yeah, I've definitely been through a ton. That's no secret to the world.
You think?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And I actually, after going through even more stuff last year, I came out of treatment again, and I realized, like, I really want to do this for myself, and I want to make the best album possible, something that, really represents who I am. And I think the best way to do that is, and the easiest way to do something the most authentic is to do it clean and sober. So yeah. I made this album, clean and sober. I can't say that about my last album, but this one I'm really, really proud about.
Yeah, I love it. Good for you. You're a role model. I love you. I look up to you. Every time I see you do something, I'm like, ooh, come on, buddy, get back up. And you get back up and you just knock people out. You're like, how about this thing? And how about this thing? How about this thing? I'm like, oh, you don't stop. I love you so much.
For her to say that this was her best work, and that she even recognized something. She said, and if I want to do the best job that I can, I need to do this clean and sober. So this can't even be dismissed as, like, this girl's totally on drugs. She's not in the right mind. No, she purposefully, in the right mind, said, I want to make something that is so authentically me. That ought to tell you something, brothers and sisters. What is inside of us if we don't allow Jesus to transform our hearts? Evil is in every single one of us. The Bible is about transformation. Listen to this. 2 Timothy 3:5 says this, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. And then it says something very interesting, from such turn away. What is the power of the gospel? What does it mean by power? Well, let's break this down a little bit because here Paul's telling us, don't follow after people like this. People follow these people. Look at how many fans say, everything that you put out, all this music, it affects me. Look at Jimmy Fallon saying, what you're doing, you're my role model. People treat these celebrities as role models. So whatever they do will get repeated out into the public, right? And so listen to this. These are some fans of hers talking about how much she's influenced them.
I look at my fans as like family, but because I had been so open and honest about the things that I dealt with, I felt like I had to be this perfect role model.
I love what she does for young girls, and her music it saved my life.
I don't think she really understands, how much of an impact she has on her fans.
You can see example after example. Everyone that is in the media, and especially that has a microphone, has an influence over people. For anybody that says, oh, it doesn't impact me, it doesn't influence me, there is a slew of evidence that talks about how much what these people do affects people's choices down the road. And so the Bible talks about the power of the gospel. What is that? Psalms 119:37 says, turn my eyes from looking at worthless things and give me life in your ways. David is recognizing, I don't want to set any wicked thing before my eyes. Help me to keep my eyes on you, Lord. Hebrews 12:2 says, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Look at how the Bible refers to what Jesus did, the joy that was set before him. He endured the cross. He died for us. He had to go on that cross because of our sinful choices. And what a mockery to take that very symbol of saving us from the depths of evil and hell to all of a sudden blaspheme that and put some sexual spin on that. I don't even know where to begin with this. Brothers and sisters, we need to pray for this person. This person understands that there is a war between God and Satan, and she is literally going on the other side. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, says Paul, of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also the Greek. So when it talks about to the Jew, to the Bible-believing people of that day, to the Christians, and also to anyone else that believes in the world, demonstrated by the Gentiles or the Greeks, right? It is the power of God unto salvation. What is this word power? If you look it up in the Greek, that power, that word means dunamis. Dunamis means literally strength, ability, the power to perform a miracle. So the moral power of excellence, the power is to change. That's what the power is for. The power and influence which belongs to riches and wealth. That's what it says, right? Have you ever heard the phrase that says money talks? Why does it talk? Because it has power. It can give people power. So power in resources arising from numbers, power consisting from resting armies, strong power. And what do each of those represent? They represent a change. The power of the gospel is to change. If you say you're a Christian and you find yourself still doing the exact same things that you ever did or worse than before, then you are like what Paul penned to Timothy, saying there is a form of godliness, but you've denied the power. You got to let God change your heart. You've got to desire that God changes your heart. You've got to open the door of your heart and invite Jesus in every single day to make that change. Do you guys remember the story of the woman that believed that if she could just get close to Jesus, that if she reached out and she touched his garment, that all of a sudden she would be transformed and changed because she had been bleeding for many, many years? And look at this. That's exactly what it says down in verse 5, Mark 5:30. It says that Jesus, knowing himself that virtue had gone out to him from him, turned about in the press and said, "Who touched my clothes?" You see, the virtue is that same word, dunamis. What happened when she reached out and touched his garment? She was changed. Dunamis, the power to change her from something that was ailing her. Sin is just like that. And if we allow God to change our hearts, we won't fight against him. 2 Peter 1:3 says, his divine power has given us everything that we need for a godly life through our knowledge of him who has called us by his own glory and goodness. God has given us all the tools. That's what it says right here. You can take this at face value. God has given us the tools to transform our lives and to follow in a godly, nice pattern life. He's given us the tools to do it. The only problem is sometimes we don't allow him to come in and do that change. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. Who's doing the changing? It isn't us. It's God. It's God's power. All we have to do is open up the door and say, here is my heart, Lord. Take it, mold it, and do what you want with it. So as she continues this conversation, listen to how she's describing all these things that she's putting into these stories or these songs.
I was raised Christian, and I went to this big, fancy mega church and saw a lot of things that I didn't like, felt outcasted. And when I moved to California, kept going to church, but then kept hearing things that were not okay because I was figuring myself out. And I'm like, how are you going to tell me who I should and should not love?
Yeah.
And be attracted to?
Yeah.
And
so look at that. She's now starting to take a look at, oh, well, the church is telling me that I shouldn't be in this kind of a relationship. I shouldn't, if I'm in love with another woman, I shouldn't be in this kind. Well, I don't want that then. Well, why do you think the Bible tells you these kind of things? Because this is the life that God has saying that he wants us to lead and to live. And when we take the Bible and we say, you know what, I don't like that part, I'm going to white that out, or I'm going to cross that out, then what we're effectively doing is saying that we are the suppositors of truth. We are the ones that make up what we believe and what we don't believe. There has to be a line of truth, and that line of truth has to come from the Bible. If it says it in the Bible, then I believe it. And that's where she starts to look around and go, you know what? They're telling me to do stuff that I really want to do. And so, I don't really want to do this. This is a lesson for us. I hope and pray that you hear these little moments that she's decided to walk away from God because she literally couldn't do whatever she wanted to do. That was more important to her than following what the Bible told her to do. Look at this. She made a post on Instagram. I'm even ashamed to actually read this. And her post is awful. It says, be a slut, show your body, take your clothes off, have all the safe and different consensual relationships that you want, be kinky, just awful things, make and watch porn. This is what she's now starting to encourage her fans to do. Brothers and sisters, if you are not on God's side and you don't let God transform your heart, it is very, very thin of a line for us to literally step outside of God's world and embrace the enemy of souls. Watch this. They even talk a little bit more about her rejection of religion and why.
And that's where it falls apart, because the principle of religion is actually a beautiful thing. It's community driven. The idea is to find solace and to find comfort in the arms of others and not just yourself, to help you through tough times.
Yeah.
The problem is then the framework gets more and more rigid because it appeals to money and business.
Right.
And it just pushes people with big hearts out of the room.
Yeah. And when I found out that the owner of the church or the pastor of the church bought a $20 million plane with the church's money.
There it is.
After I was saving up my money for offerings. I was like, I'm out of here.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Okay. So it makes a lot of sense. If you take your eyes off of Jesus and you start looking around at each other, even the church leaders, brothers and sisters, you can lose heart. We are not supposed to base our religion on each other. We're all caught in this war. And when she took her eyes off of Jesus and saying, I need that, and she started looking at all the things around her, that's what religion was to her. She said, I don't want that anymore. That makes a lot of sense, of course, if you see the hypocrisy and things like that, but you have to recognize that we are engaged in a war. The devil is sending his armies against anyone that says they're believers of God. That's why we see a lot of problems in the church, because the devil's not going to spend his time and energy on people that he hasn't already won, right? Or that he has won. So he's literally going to spend his focus on people that he hasn't won over yet. And that's why I believe that people that are religious leaders in our church, pray for them. They need prayers. People that are up front, they need prayers. We need prayers. You guys need to pray for those people that are being bold and stepping out there for God, because the devil doesn't want us to tell the truth, and he's going to do whatever he can to discourage us. But here's the lesson that I want you to take from this. Don't look at the leaders. Don't look at each other. Look at Jesus. That's an important message to learn from this. Acts 26:18 says, to open their eyes. Oh, I want to tell you a little bit about what's happening right here. So this is Paul speaking to King Agrippa. And Jesus is actually talking to him because he's recounting his road to Damascus. And so that's where Paul had his conversion. Remember, he was killing Christians. He was dragging them out in the streets and killing them. Can you imagine when they get to heaven and they see Paul walking around and they're going to be like, wait, you were fighting against this whole thing. But Paul let Jesus change his heart. And so listen to this. This is what Jesus said. Paul's recounting this in Acts. To open their eyes, giving Paul the mission of being a minister, so that they may turn from darkness to light, from the power of Satan to God. The power that Satan uses to transform you into his likeness. Paul is saying, Jesus was telling me he wants to change me into the likeness, and the power is doing that through God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me. Brothers and sisters, here's the takeaway message from this. Be careful. The Bible tells us, be careful who you associate with. We need to daily ask for the Holy Spirit to come into our hearts, to change us. We need to not look around at all the other things that are hypocrisies in the churches. Yes, I think we should be bold. If you see something that is not biblically sound, it is our right to go to those people and talk about that. But if you're judging your religious experience off of something they're doing, then you have the potential of getting discouraged and then eventually rejecting it just like this. God is wanting to call us out of darkness and into his marvelous light. Many people, all of us, have done terrible and awful things, and it's beautiful that God is promising again and again and again in his word that he will forgive you if you simply ask for forgiveness. And he will change you if you allow him to change you. You guys, I hope you got a blessing out of today's talk. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please like and share this video. I know a lot of young people really hold Demi Lovato up in their mind as a great artist. If you know somebody that likes her music, share this with them. If you know somebody that just is obsessed with mainstream Hollywood type things, share this video with them. It does nothing just sitting in the computer. And pray for Demi Lovato. I believe that she has an awakening, that chance that God woke her up, and she literally needs our prayers, just like all these celebrities. And just like Paul, people would have looked at him in his day and said, no way that guy's going to heaven. He's literally killing Christians. Paul did some amazing work that came out of that. And so God can take anyone's heart, no matter what you've done, and transform it. So we need to pray for these people. We thank you guys for your love and support. If you guys want to support our ministry, there's a lot of ways to get involved with us. Pray for us, but you can check out our t-shirt ministry. We've got an awesome t-shirt ministry with wonderful, awesome graphics like the one I'm wearing right now. It's called lightwear.shop, and you'll see in the link in the description below. And we thank you guys for everything that you do for us, the love and support. We'll see you guys in the next one.